Have you ever felt that? That constant, like, pressure cooker feeling inside, maybe a racing heart, but it's not triggered by, actual danger, but maybe a looming deadline.
Yeah.
Or that relentless spinning of what-if thoughts, the kind that just keeps you staring at the ceiling at 3 in the morning. If any of that sounds familiar, then you know anxiety isn't just some fleeting nervousness. It can feel more like this unwanted companion in our really fast-paced world.
It really can, and that's exactly why today we're doing a deep dive. We're looking closely at the work of a psychologist with decades of experience in this area. We want to move past just the basic definitions, We're going to really dissect the mechanics of what's called maladaptive anxiety.
Maladaptive, okay.
Yeah, the kind that genuinely holds people back. So this deep dive, it's really our path to finding not just understanding, but real, science-backed, and importantly, actionable solutions.
Right. Actionable is key. Our mission today is pretty clear, isn't it? We want to equip you, our listener, with the knowledge to manage those overwhelming physical sensations and, quiet that really demanding inner critic that seems to pop up, and ultimately help you reclaim your sense of calm, your sense of control.
Exactly. We're getting into the how and the why of managing anxiety.
So let's unpack this. It feels really crucial.
Okay. So to start, we really need to frame anxiety correctly because in its pure form, its healthy form, anxiety is actually vital. It's a non-negotiable part of our survival toolkit.
A survival tool?
Yeah.
How so?
Think of it like a built-in alarm system, honed over millennia of evolution. Imagine you're about to step off a curb and suddenly a car just lays on the horn.
Okay, yeah. You jump back.
Exactly. That immediate jolt of fear, that surge of energy that pulls you back onto the sidewalk. That's healthy anxiety. It's proportionate to the threat. And crucially, it fades away as soon as the danger passes. It does its job and then it quiets down.
That makes total sense. It's like a temporary boost, a motivator to act. Okay.
Yeah.
But what happens when that system misfires? Or when the threat isn't a car, but maybe just an email? Or thinking about a social event? Why does that physical reaction sometimes stick around even when your rational mind knows there's no immediate danger?
That's the critical point. That's the moment anxiety shifts from being helpful to being harmful. And that's what we call maladaptive anxiety.
Okay.
Essentially, the alarm system is either way too sensitive or sometimes worse, it just gets stuck in the on position.
Check on. Wow.
Yeah. So it starts getting triggered by non-threats. Things like an imagined future catastrophe, maybe a perceived social slight, or even just that constant low-level anticipatory worry. It stops being a useful warning signal and becomes this continuous internal noise. And that can be really debilitating. It feels chaotic for the person experiencing it.
And that chaos, it shows up in so many different ways, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, people often mistake it for purely physical problems, which is why understanding that biological link is so important.
Yeah.
Maybe we should start with the body's reaction, the physical symptoms. What are people actually feeling?
Right. Everything you feel physically during anxiety, it's basically the fight or flight response in action. When your brain perceives a threat, and this is key, whether it's real or imagined, the hypothalamus signals the release of these powerful stress hormones. We're talking adrenaline and cortisol.
Adrenaline and cortisol. Okay.
And this flood of hormones literally prepares your body for physical confrontation or a quick escape. It's primal.
And that hormonal rush leads to some pretty scary sensations. Yeah.
Absolutely. That surge of adrenaline, it immediately causes your heart to race or pound, those palpitations people feel. Your heart is just pushing blood faster to your major muscles, getting them ready for action.
Makes sense.
And this often comes with shortness of breath or even hyperventilation. Your breathing becomes rapid and shallow. Physiologically, your body's trying to take in more oxygen for intense effort.
But in like an office setting, that just feels like you can't breathe, right?
Yeah.
Chest tightness, maybe feeling smothered.
Precisely. It's a mismatch between the ancient response and the modern trigger. And that shallow breathing, that often leads directly to feeling dizzy or lightheaded.
Oh, okay. Why is that?
Your body isn't getting the right balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide when you hyperventilate. So things can start to feel a bit floaty, sometimes even unreal.
Got it.
Then you get the other classic signs of that sympathetic nervous system just going into overdrive, like profuse sweating.
Oh, yeah.
Your body is trying to cool down muscles it thinks are about to work hard. And trembling or shaking because those muscles are literally tensed and primed for action.
And that leads to that constant muscle tension people complain about, right? Like in the neck and shoulders.
Exactly. Persistent chronic muscle tension. You often feel it in the neck, the shoulders, sometimes the jaw. It can even lead to chronic tension headaches for a lot of people.
Okay, what about the stomach issues? Is so many people with anxiety talk about nausea or cramps or worse.
Yeah, that's the body's triage system kicking in. During what it perceives as an emergency, the digestive system is basically considered non-essential for immediate survival.
Non-essential. Oh,
Right. So blood flow gets diverted away from your gut and sent towards your arms and legs, the escape muscles.
wow.
And this massive disruption to your normal digestive process, that's what leads to those common anxiety symptoms like nausea, stomach cramps, maybe irritable bowel flare-ups, or diarrhea. It's a direct physical consequence of your system thinking it needs to fight off a predator.
It really highlights that profound mind-body connection. I mean, we see this perfectly in the case study you shared about Sarah. She was what, a manager? High achiever.
Yes, Sarah,
Yeah.
a 34-year-old manager, very successful, but she kept ending up in the emergency room absolutely convinced she was having some kind of heart attack.
That must have been terrifying.
Incredibly. She had months of these intermittent, really frightening chest pains, severe, rapid heart palpitations. She underwent extensive medical tests, convinced it was a catastrophic heart condition.
And it wasn't.
No. It was only when her doctor really looked closely and noticed that her most severe episodes lined up perfectly with periods of peak stress at work. Only then did they realize. The symptoms were pure physical anxiety. For Sarah, just understanding that the root cause was her mental health, not impending cardiac failure, that was the first huge step toward getting better.
Wow. Okay, so that's the body. But let's move inside the skull now. The emotional and cognitive symptoms. This feels like where the real energy drain happens for a lot of people.
It really is. Emotionally, the absolute hallmark is that excessive worry or dread. It's this relentless, often uncontrollable apprehension that usually feels way out of proportion to the actual problem at hand.
Just takes over everything.
It can. And because that internal alarm system is basically blaring nonstop, your nervous system gets frayed. This often leads to things like extreme irritability, a really short fuse.
Yeah, I can see that. And what about during those really intense peaks? People sometimes talk about feeling like they're losing it.
That's a very real fear for someone in the midst of intense anxiety or panic. The fear of losing control or going crazy. It's often accompanied by these unsettling feelings like depersonalization.
What's that exactly?
It's a feeling of being detached from your own body or yourself, like you're watching yourself from the outside, or derealization, where the world around you suddenly feels unreal, distant, or foreign.
Ooh, whoa.
Yeah, these are terrifying cognitive side effects that can happen during extreme stress responses.
And cognitively, just day-to-day functioning seems to take a hit too, doesn't it? Like focusing.
It absolutely does. You often experience difficulty concentrating because your brain's attention is constantly being hijacked, pulled away towards scanning for potential threats, even subconsciously.
Scanning for threats.
Yeah. And then you get the racing thoughts. It feels like a torrent of rapid fire, often catastrophic and fragmented ideas just swirling around. But maybe the most mentally exhausting symptom is rumination.
Rumination. That
I mean-
sounds unpleasant, like getting stuck.
Exactly. It's like your brain is stuck in a negative feedback loop.
Yeah.
Rumination is when you repetitively dwell on past mistakes or potential future disasters, just going over and over them without ever finding a solution.
That sounds incredibly draining.
It is. And this kind of thinking often fuels things like perfectionism and overthinking. It can create this state of paralysis by analysis where you're so afraid of making the wrong decision or a less than perfect decision that you end up making no decision at all.
Right. Stuck again. Okay, and finally, there are the actions, the behaviors. What people do when they feel anxious. And you mentioned the big one, avoidance.
Avoidance, yes. It's probably the most common maladaptive coping mechanism you see. People start to systematically avoid situations or places or even people that they associate with feeling anxious.
Like avoiding parties if you have social anxiety, or maybe certain roads if you had a panic attack while driving.
Precisely those kinds of things. Public speaking, specific social gatherings, using elevators, you name it. And here's why it's such a trap. Avoidance provides immediate relief. Powerful, temporary relief.
So it feels like it's working.
Right. That temporary relief basically teaches your brain, see, that situation was dangerous, and avoiding it saved you.
Which means the next time you even think about that situation, the fear is probably even stronger because that whole anxiety cycle just got reinforced.
You've got it. It locks you into this vicious cycle of increasing fear and shrinking life experiences. Other common behavioral signs you might notice are things like physical fidgeting or restlessness.
Like tapping feet, clicking pens.
Yeah, often unconscious ways of releasing that pent-up nervous energy. And sometimes a gradual withdrawal from activities that used to be enjoyable. Plus, you often see noticeable changes in sleep patterns or eating habits alongside anxiety.
So, okay, we see the symptoms, we see the behaviors, but why does this happen? Why does that alarm system become so hyper-vigilant for some people and not others? It's clearly not just one thing, right?
Definitely not. It's almost always a complex interplay, a multifactorial mix of biology and environment. On the biological side, genetics certainly play a role.
How so? Inherited anxiety.
You can inherit a predisposition, yeah.
Yeah.
A tendency towards a more sensitive, more hyperreactive nervous system, and this links directly to brain chemistry.
Okay, let's talk neurotransmitters. Which ones are usually involved here?
The main players we look at are serotonin, which impacts mood and general well-being. Then there's norepinephrine, which you can think of as the brain's accelerator pedal. It's related to alertness and that fight or flight response.
That accelerator. Okay.
And critically, there's gamma aminobutyric acid. GABA acts as the brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. It's essentially the brain's brake pedal.
Brakes. Got it.
So an imbalance, maybe not enough GABA, the brake, or maybe too much norepinephrine, the accelerator can mean the system is just chronically revved up, leading to chronic anxiety. The accelerator's stuck on and the brakes aren't working efficiently.
Wow. Okay, so that's the biological foundation. But then you layer on life experiences, psychology.
Exactly. Personality traits can make someone more vulnerable. Things like inherent perfectionism, maybe high conscientiousness, or even just being naturally shy or introverted. Then there's chronic stress. Or going through major life changes, divorce, losing a job, moving tap. Those are massive potential triggers.
And trauma. That seems like a big one.
Hugely important. Trauma, especially chronic trauma or adversity experienced early in life, can literally reshape brain pathways. It can make the amygdala, the brain's fear center, permanently over-responsive, always on high alert.
And what about just early childhood, like how secure you felt?
Absolutely critical. Early experiences, like having an insecure attachment with primary caregivers, can shape how you fundamentally view the world, whether it feels like a safe, predictable place or not. If a child's environment lacked that predictability or emotional security, they often develop this hypervigilant scanning mechanism, always sort of bracing for the next threat. And that pattern can carry right into adult anxiety.
We also absolutely have to mention the external factors, right? Like underlying medical issues or even substance use. These can mimic anxiety or make it much worse.
Essential point. It's crucial to rule out underlying medical conditions. Things like thyroid imbalances, hyperthyroidism specifically can produce symptoms almost identical to a panic attack. Certain heart conditions too.
Right, need to check those first.
And substance use is a major factor. Too much caffeine or high sugar intake can physically trigger those jittery, panic-like symptoms. And withdrawal from alcohol or certain medications can severely destabilize the nervous system and trigger intense anxiety.
Okay, so it's complex. And to give our listeners some clinical context, these symptoms we've been describing, they cluster together into specific diagnoses, right?
Correct. We talked about the general picture, but clinicians use specific diagnostic categories. For instance, generalized anxiety disorder, or GAD, is characterized by that persistent, excessive, uncontrollable worry about everyday things. Health, work, money, family, lasting for 6 months or more.
6 months minimum, okay.
Then there's panic disorder. This involves experiencing recurrent, completely unexpected panic attacks and developing this intense fear about having future attacks. The fear itself becomes a major problem.
Got it. And social situations.
That's social anxiety disorder. It's a profound, often debilitating fear of being judged, scrutinized, negatively evaluated, or humiliated in social or performance situations. It can really limit a person's life.
Okay, so the physical side is intense, the causes are complex. But let's talk about the inner world again, those anxious thoughts. They feel like the fuel that keeps the whole engine running, right?
Correct.
How do we even start to get a handle on that internal chaos?
That's exactly right. When anxiety really takes hold, your mind starts manufacturing thoughts that are, well, often not very accurate. They tend to be distorted, exaggerated, focusing almost exclusively on potential negative outcomes. They essentially function like irrational thought habits. Cognitive distortions. And just identifying these patterns is the first crucial step toward disarming them.
Irrational thought habits, I like that. So let's break down some common ones. What does cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, usually target?
Okay, a big one is catastrophizing.
Catastrophizing. Sounds bad.
It is. It's assuming the absolute worst case scenario will happen based on a minor or even neutral event. For example, Maybe you make a small mistake at work, and your thought immediately jumps to, I'm going to get fired, I'll lose my house, and my life is ruined.
Wow, zero perspective.
Exactly. There's no proportional thinking. It's straight to the worst possible outcome.
And that often goes hand in hand with that paralyzing loop of what-if scenarios,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, absolutely. That relentless stream of negative hypotheticals just spinning and spinning. What if I miss my flight? What if they don't like me? What if I see something stupid? What if I fail the test? These what-ifs consume enormous mental energy, but they almost never lead to actual problem-solving or useful solutions. They just generate more anxiety.
And then we come back to that energy vampire.
Rumination.
Rumination.
The broken record player in your head. It's repetitively dwelling on past events, often mistakes, or worrying endlessly about future negative possibilities, constantly replaying conversations, second-guessing decisions.
Just churning, basically.
Mental churning is a great way to put it. It achieves nothing except making you feel exhausted and more anxious. And alongside these, you also see patterns like fortune-telling predicting negative outcomes with certainty, and mind reading, assuming you know others are judging you negatively, again, usually without any real evidence.
This is where that idea from Dr. David Burns seems so powerful. Your emotions result from the messages you give yourself. The goal isn't necessarily to stop the thoughts, but maybe change your relationship to them.
That's the core insight, absolutely. The analogy we often use is really helpful here. Think of yourself as the driver of a car. Your anxious thoughts, they're like a really noisy, really unhelpful passenger shouting terrible directions from the back seat.
Okay.
Your job isn't necessarily to silence the passenger, that can be really hard, but to acknowledge them, maybe label them, oh, there's that worry thought again, or, okay, that's catastrophizing, but then consciously choose not to follow their directions. You keep your hands firmly on the steering wheel. You're still in charge.
I like that. Acknowledge, label, but don't obey. Okay. Now, before we dive into solutions, we absolutely have to clarify something that causes a lot of confusion. The difference between an anxiety attack and a panic attack. People use them interchangeably, but clinically they're distinct, aren't they? And knowing the difference seems vital for knowing how to respond.
It's an essential distinction, yes. Because the kind of immediate intervention needed, the coping skills that are most effective, they can vary quite dramatically between the two. So let's break down the key differences between these two very intense experiences.
Okay, let's start with the onset. How does the feeling actually begin?
Right. An anxiety attack typically has a more gradual onset. It tends to build up maybe over minutes, sometimes hours, occasionally even over a whole day. It often feels like an escalation of an already existing state of high stress or worry.
Okay, a buildup and a panic attack.
A panic attack, in contrast, is defined by its abrupt and sudden onset. It often hits like a physiological tidal wave, seemingly out of the blue, even when you were feeling relatively calm just moments before.
Out of the blue. Wow. Okay, what about the trigger? Is there always one?
For an anxiety attack, there's usually a clear, identifiable trigger or stressor. It could be anticipating a specific event, dealing with ongoing pressure, the difficult conversation, something like that.
Makes sense.
A panic attack, however, can be entirely unprovoked. It can strike during relaxation, even waking someone from sleep. Or, paradoxically, it can be triggered by the intense fear of having another panic attack. That fear itself becomes the trigger.
Fear of the fear.
Okay.
Now the intensity, this feels like the biggest differentiator.
It really is. An anxiety attack feels awful, no question. It's uncomfortable, highly distressing, pervasive. You get the muscle tension, the persistent worry, that feeling of being overwhelmed. But a panic attack it's an order of magnitude more severe. It's typically experienced as an overwhelming surge of sheer terror or impending doom. The physical symptoms are so intense that people genuinely believe they are dying, having a heart attack, suffocating, or losing their mind completely. The intensity is extreme.
Extreme intensity. Got it. And lastly, duration. How long do these things last?
An anxiety attack can actually last for quite an extended period. Sometimes hours, occasionally waxing and waning throughout a full day. It usually subsides more slowly, often as the perceived stressor is removed or managed.
Okay, so potentially quite long.
A panic attack, somewhat ironically given its intensity, is typically quite short. It peaks very quickly, usually within about 10 minutes. Although the after effects, the exhaustion, the residual fear, the shakiness can linger for much longer.
Okay, 10-minute peak, but feels like an eternity, I imagine. The source material we looked at really details the specific clinical symptoms for a true panic attack, emphasizing that extreme nature.
That's right. According to the clinical criteria, for an episode to be classified as a panic attack, you need the abrupt onset of intense fear accompanied by at least 4 of the following severe symptoms, hitting suddenly. Things like palpitations or a pounding, accelerated heart rate, sweating, trembling or shaking, sensations of shortness of breath or feeling smothered.
Smothered, wow.
Yeah, feelings of choking, chest pain or discomfort, often mistaken for a heart attack, nausea or abdominal distress, feeling dizzy, unsteady, lightheaded, or faint,
Okay.
chills or heat sensations. And critically, paresthesias, that's numbness or tingling sensations, often in the hands, feet, or face.
Pins and needles, okay. And what about those really terrifying cognitive symptoms we touched on earlier?
Yes, those are key diagnostic features too. Experiencing derealization, that feeling that your surroundings aren't real, or depersonalization, feeling detached from yourself, like you're in a dream. And of course, the intense fear of losing control or going crazy, and the overwhelming fear of dying. Having at least 4 of these hit suddenly defines a panic attack clinically.
That paints a very clear, very intense picture. Let's bring back Mark, the accountant we mentioned. He had generalized anxiety, right? So he often felt that chronic, lower-level worry. That sounds like his baseline anxiety attack.
Exactly. That persistent worry about work, the muscle tension, the difficulty concentrating, that was his typical GAD presentation, his anxiety attack state. But his first panic attack was completely different. It hit him suddenly while he was just driving home one evening. No specific trigger in that moment.
While driving. That's
Well,
scary.
terrifying for him. He said his heart felt like it exploded. He couldn't catch his breath. His hands went numb, and he was hit with this overwhelming conviction that he was having a heart attack and was about to die. He had to pull the car over immediately, shaking uncontrollably. That abrupt onset, that maximal intensity, the specific physical symptoms like numbness and that cognitive terror, the fear of dying, that's what confirmed. It wasn't just a severe anxiety attack. It was a textbook panic attack.
And knowing that difference helps him manage it now.
Immensely, because the strategies needed to ride out a sudden panic attack can be different from managing that slower burn anxiety attack. Understanding the distinction allows him, and anyone, to use more tailored, effective coping mechanisms for each specific experience.
Okay, that clarity is incredibly helpful. So understanding the problem is phase 1. Phase 2 is, well, putting out the fire, right? When those physical sensations surge or that rumination loop kicks into high gear, what can people do immediately? We need practical ways to interrupt that fight or flight signal right then and there.
Absolutely. These are the in-the-moment interventions. They're designed to essentially hijack that physiological anxiety cycle and send a rapid, powerful message of safety back to your nervous system.
Safety signal. Okay, where do we start?
Your most powerful and accessible immediate tool is always your breath. But it has to be intentional breathing. See, anxious breathing is usually shallow, rapid chest breathing that signals danger. We need to consciously shift to deep, diaphragmatic breathing, belly breathing.
Belly breathing. Okay, we hear that a lot. But let's get into the why. Why does it work? It's not just about calming down, is it? What's the science behind emphasizing, say, a longer exhale?
The longer exhale is the absolute secret weapon here. It works because it directly stimulates the vagus nerve.
Vagus nerve, okay.
This is a major nerve running from your brainstem down through your body, and it's the main highway of communication for your parasympathetic nervous system. That's your body's rest and digest system, the opposite of fight or flight.
The brakes.
Exactly, the brakes. When you deliberately engage in slow, deep breathing, especially with a prolonged exhalation, you are sending a direct physiological signal up the vagus nerve to your brainstem saying, the emergency is over, you are safe now. This rapidly helps lower your heart rate and blood pressure.
So the technique is actually critical for stimulating that nerve properly. It's not just breathing deeply.
Precisely. The specifics matter. A really effective and easy-to-remember technique is the 4-1-6 rule, or sometimes 4-1-7.
Okay, 4-1-6. How does that work?
You inhale slowly and deeply through your nose for a count of 4. Really focus on letting your belly rise, not just your chest that ensures it's diaphragmatic. Then hold the breath gently for just 1 count, and here's the crucial part. Exhale slowly, deliberately and completely through your mouth for a count of 6, or even 7 if you can manage it comfortably. Purse your lips slightly like you're blowing out a candle slowly.
Longer exhale is key.
Longer exhale is absolutely key. That's the primary signal to your parasympathetic system. Practice the sequence: in for 4, hold for 1, out for 6 or 7 for even just 2 to 5 minutes. You are literally retraining your nervous system in real time to switch gears from panic to calm.
Okay, breathing is foundational. What else? When your mind is just completely caught up in catastrophizing or predicting doom. How do you snap your attention out of that internal storm and get grounded in reality?
That's where grounding techniques come in. They use your immediate sensory input to interrupt that runaway cognitive cycle. The 5-4-3-2-1 method is a really popular and effective framework.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Right.
See 5 things, feel 4, hear 3.
Exactly. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can physically feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. But here's the nuance. It requires advanced active engagement, not just passively naming things.
Active engagement. What do you mean by that? Give us an example.
Okay, so when you name 5 things you see, don't just list. Desk, lamp, computer, window, mug. Instead, actively notice details. I see the specific grain of the wood on my desk. I see the way the light reflects off the curved surface of the lamp. I see the faint smudge on the computer screen.
Really observing.
Yes. And for the 4 things you feel, actively engage your physical anchors. Don't just say chair. Press your feet flat onto the floor and really feel the solid ground beneath you. Notice the texture of your clothing against your skin. Feel the weight of your body sinking into the chair. The goal is full sensory immersion.
Yeah.
You want to pull as much of your attention as possible away from the internal anxiety and into the external present moment.
I heard that using temperature, like cold, can be a really powerful physical anchor too, like a pattern interrupt.
Absolutely. That sudden shift in physical sensation from cold exposure is a highly effective disruptor to the anxiety cycle. Things like holding an ice cube in your hand, splashing cold water on your face or the back of your neck, even just rubbing an ice pack on your wrists.
Why does that work so well?
It does more than just distract you. The cold stimulus, especially on the face, can trigger something called the mammalian dive reflex. It's an innate physiological response that automatically slows your heart rate and redirects blood flow away from the extremities, basically. It puts the brakes on that adrenaline-fueled panic cycle very quickly. It's a strong physiological reset.
Wow, okay. Body calmed, anchored in the present. But what about the thoughts? The mind is often still chattering away, right? What immediate tools do we have for managing that cognitive noise, maybe using some of those CBT principles?
Great question. Once the immediate physical surge starts to subside, you still need to address the thoughts that are fueling it. We can use some CBT-like techniques right in the moment.
Okay.
First, adopt a stance of mindfulness. Observe, don't absorb. Remember the noisy passenger analogy. You start to view your thoughts not as absolute truths or commands, but as temporary internal events, like clouds floating by.
Observe, don't absorb.
Right. You acknowledge the thought, maybe even label it silently. There's a worry thought about the presentation, or, okay, that's a catastrophizing thought. But you consciously refuse to get swept away by it or obey its command. You don't have to cite the thought, just change your reaction to it. Let it pass without grabbing onto it.
Okay, so noticing without engaging. Then what? Is there a more active step?
Yes, the next step can be active thought challenging. This is like becoming your own gentle cognitive detective, cross-examining the anxious thought.
Cross-examining. How?
When a strong, anxious, or catastrophic thought hits, you ask yourself a few critical questions. First, what is the actual objective evidence for this thought? And just as importantly, what's the evidence against it? Second, what is an alternative, more realistic, or more balanced way of looking at the situation? Often, the truth lies somewhere in the middle, not at the absolute worst-case extreme your anxiety is suggesting. And third, a really powerful one. What is the utility of thinking this thought right now? Is dwelling on this actually helping me solve a problem or prepare effectively, or is it just making me feel awful? If it's just torture, give yourself permission to gently set it aside.
I like that utility question. Is this helping? Okay, and that leads nicely into another technique I've heard about, actually scheduling time for worry. Containment.
Yes. Set aside worry time. This is a fantastic mental boundary setting exercise. You consciously dedicate a specific limited time slot each day, say 15 or 20 minutes, maybe at 4:30 p.m., exclusively for worrying.
Worry appointment.
Exactly. So if an anxious thought pops up at 10 a.m., you gently acknowledge it and tell yourself, okay, thanks for the reminder, brain. I'll give that my full attention during my scheduled worry time later. You're training your brain that worry doesn't get to run rampant all day. It happens during its designated window. This can surprisingly reduce the overall amount of time you spend worrying.
That makes sense. Containing it. And what if you just need an immediate mental shift right now to break the loop?
That's where productive distraction comes in. But the key word here is productive. It needs to be an activity that requires genuine, focused attention to effectively break the thought pattern.
So not just mindlessly scrolling social media.
Definitely not. Passive scrolling often makes anxiety worse. Think of activities that engage your cognitive resources. Doing some mental math, like counting backwards from 100 by sevens, reading something complex or engaging, solving a quick puzzle like Sudoku, listening intently to music and focusing on the different instruments, or even engaging fully in a conversation with someone. It pulls your focus from the internal distress to an external or neutral cognitive task.
Okay, let's bring Mark the accountant back in. How did he use these kinds of immediate strategies? You mentioned he managed his performance anxiety better.
Yes, Mark provides a great example of combining these tools. He didn't magically start feeling nervous before big presentations, but he systematized his approach. He created a personal 10-minute pre-presentation ritual.
A ritual.
Yeah. It always involved doing 5 minutes of the 4-1-6 breathing to calm the physical symptoms. Then he'd deliberately do the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding exercise, focusing intently on his surroundings in the room just before he had to speak. And crucially, he actively practiced thought challenging. When the thought, "I'm going to fail and look like an idiot," popped up, he'd consciously ask himself for the evidence, remind himself of past successful presentations, and focus on the utility of that thought, which was zero.
So the combination helped.
Significantly. The breathing and grounding dramatically reduced his physical symptoms, the racing heart, the shaking hands, and the thought challenging helped dial down the cognitive terror. It moved his experience from debilitating panic to manageable nervousness. The tools gave him back a crucial sense of control right when he needed it most.
That's powerful. Okay, so immediate strategies are vital for those acute moments. But for long-term change, for building real resilience against anxiety, we need to look beyond just putting out fires, right? We need to address the underlying conditions that kind of keep the anxiety simmering.
Exactly. We need to focus on the foundational pillars of health and well-being. These are essential because chronic anxiety is often a sign of a chronically hyper-aroused nervous system. If we don't work on lowering that baseline level of stress and arousal, the alarm system will always be too sensitive, too easy to trigger. We need to build a stronger foundation.
Okay, so what are these foundational pillars for long-term calm? Where do we start?
We absolutely have to start with sleep hygiene. Sleep deprivation is a massive anxiety amplifier. It's almost impossible to feel emotionally resilient or manage stress effectively when you're exhausted. Your nervous system is already operating at a deficit.
Makes sense. So what does good sleep hygiene look like?
Consistency is king. Aim for 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night and try to stick to a regular sleep schedule, going to bed and waking up around the same time, even on weekends, as much as possible. Make sure your bedroom environment is conducive to sleep. Dark, quiet, and cool. And critically, avoid screens, phones, tablets, computers, TVs for at least an hour, preferably longer, before bed. The blue light they emit suppresses melatonin production, the hormone that signals sleepiness to your brain.
Right, the dreaded blue light. Okay, sleep is huge. What about diet? You mentioned caffeine and sugar earlier as mimicking anxiety symptoms.
Yes, a balanced diet is non-negotiable for nervous system health. Reducing or, for some people, eliminating caffeine and high sugar intake is often really beneficial. They cause rapid spikes and crashes in blood sugar and can produce physical jitters, heart palpitations, and restlessness that feel almost identical to anxiety symptoms. This can trick your brain into thinking it's anxious, even if it wasn't.
So avoiding the triggers. What should people focus on eating more of?
Prioritize whole, unprocessed foods. Lean proteins, healthy fats, lots of fruits and vegetables, and complex carbohydrates like whole grains. These provide the steady, slow-release energy your brain and nervous system need to function optimally and maintain stable blood sugar levels.
Stable energy. Got it.
Yeah.
And what about the most maybe accessible and potent natural remedy we have?
Regular exercise. Honestly, it's one of the most powerful countermeasures we have against chronic stress and anxiety. Aim for about 30 minutes of moderate intensity activity most days of the week. Find something you actually enjoy so you'll stick with it.
How does exercise help specifically with anxiety?
It works on multiple levels. Physiologically, exercise provides a healthy, productive outlet to metabolize and burn off the excess adrenaline and cortisol that chronic anxiety constantly dumps into your system. It literally helps clear out those stress hormones. Psychologically, it's a proven mood booster, releasing endorphins, those natural feel-good chemicals. It provides a healthy distraction from worries, improves sleep quality, and builds a sense of accomplishment and self-efficacy. It's incredibly potent.
Okay, sleep, diet, exercise, pillars. What about managing the external world, the day-to-day stressors?
That requires strategic stress management. This isn't just about relaxing, it's about actively managing your environment and your demands. A huge piece of this is boundary setting.
Saying no.
Learning to say no gracefully but firmly to non-essential demands or requests that overextend you. Establishing clear limits on your time and energy is a critical act of self-preservation. It directly reduces the external pressure contributing to anxiety.
That could be hard for people pleasers.
Very hard, but essential. Another strategy is breaking down large, overwhelming tasks into smaller, more manageable steps. That eat the elephant one bite at a time approach. It prevents that anxiety-induced feeling of being completely swamped and paralyzed. And finally, you must schedule mandatory relaxation breaks into your day, even just 5 or 10 minutes. Treat relaxation not as a luxury or an afterthought, but as a non-negotiable appointment with yourself to downshift your nervous system.
Non-negotiable relaxation. I like that. Okay, so those are the lifestyle foundations. What about for people looking for additional support from, say, natural remedies, herbs, supplements, always with the caveat to talk to a doctor first, of course?
Absolutely. Professional oversight is crucial here because supplements aren't regulated like pharmaceuticals, and they can interact with medications or have side effects. But that said, several natural compounds do have good evidence supporting their calming effects. Chamomile is probably the best known. It contains compounds like apigenin that seem to bind to GABA receptors in the brain in a way similar to mild tranquilizers, promoting relaxation and sleepiness, often taken as tea.
Okay, chamomile. What else?
Valerian root is another popular one, particularly for sleep issues often linked with anxiety. It's thought to work by increasing the availability of GABA in the brain again, helping to apply those neural brakes. It can cause drowsiness, though, so caution is needed.
And lavender. People use the oil, right?
Yes, lavender has demonstrated anxiolytic or anxiety-reducing effects. Inhaling the essential oil can provide fairly rapid feelings of calm for some people. Interestingly, there are also specific standardized oral lavender oil preparations, like Silexin, that have shown effectiveness in clinical trials for mild to moderate generalized anxiety disorder, sometimes comparable to low-dose anti-anxiety meds. But again, using it orally requires medical supervision for dose impurity.
Okay. And we definitely need to mention the caution regarding kava, right?
Yes, absolutely. Kava is an herb that can be effective for reducing anxiety, but it carries a known significant risk of causing severe liver damage in some individuals, especially when combined with alcohol or certain medications. Because of this potential toxicity, most health professionals strongly advise against using kava unless under very strict medical monitoring. The risk often outweighs the benefit for general use.
Good to know. Okay, let's shift gears slightly to a really exciting area, nutritional psychiatry, the connection between our gut and our brain. How does what we eat, beyond just sugar and caffeine, impact anxiety?
This is a rapidly growing field, and the gut-brain axis is incredibly important for mental health. Your gut microbiome, the trillions of bacteria living in your digestive tract, profoundly influences your mood, inflammation levels, and even neurotransmitter production. A significant portion of your body's serotonin, for example, is actually made in the gut.
Wow, I didn't know that about serotonin. So what nutrients are key for this connection?
Several stand out. Omega-3 fatty acids, found in fatty fish like salmon as well as walnuts and flax seeds, are crucial structural components of brain cells and help reduce inflammation throughout the body, including the brain. Low levels have been linked to mood disorders. Magnesium is another vital mineral. It acts as a natural muscle and nerve relaxant and is involved in hundreds of biochemical reactions, including those related to stress response and GABA function. Unfortunately, magnesium deficiency is quite common in modern diets. Leafy greens, nuts, seeds, dark chocolate are good sources.
Magnesium, okay, and probiotics.
Yes, supporting a healthy, diverse gut microbiome through probiotics, found in supplements for fermented foods like yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, can potentially influence neurotransmitter balance and reduce inflammation, positively impacting mood and anxiety levels. The research is still evolving, but it's very promising.
Fascinating. And beyond diet, what about established mind-body practices, things like yoga, tai chi, meditation?
These practices are powerful because they directly train your brain and nervous system away from that hyperreactive anxiety state. Yoga and Tai Chi combine controlled breathing, mindful movement, and focused attention, which systematically engages the parasympathetic rest and digest system. Meditation, particularly mindfulness meditation, is essentially active brain training. It's not about stopping thoughts or achieving a blank mind. It's about learning to observe your thoughts and feelings without judgment and without automatically reacting to them. Over time, this practice literally rewires neural pathways, reducing emotional reactivity and lessening the grip of anxiety.
Sounds like building a skill, like strengthening a muscle.
That's a perfect analogy. It takes consistent practice, but the benefits accumulate. We saw this with Emily, the graphic designer you mentioned, who had that persistent evening anxiety that messed with her sleep.
Right. How does she combine these holistic approaches?
Emily found her sweet spot by combining nature exposure with structured mindfulness. She committed to a daily forest bathing walk after work, basically, a slow, mindful walk in a nearby park, focusing intently on her senses, the sounds, the smells, the feeling of the air. This helped release the physical tension built up during the day. Then she paired this walk with using a guided meditation app for 10-15 minutes right before bed. The walk addressed the physical restlessness, and the guided meditation provided the mental anchor she needed to quiet her racing thoughts and transition from the day's stresses into a calm state ready for sleep. That combination was transformative for her evening anxiety hum.
That's a great example of synergy. Okay, Emily used an app. In our modern world, our phones can be huge sources of stress, but it's amazing they can also be turned into tools for calm, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the best evidence-based applications out there that can actually help with anxiety?
It's true, technology can be a double-edged sword, but used wisely, apps can provide incredibly accessible and structured support. We generally want to prioritize apps that are rooted in proven therapeutic principles, like mindfulness and CBT.
Okay, so starting with the meditation and mindfulness apps, the ones focused on being present.
Yeah, apps like Calm and Headspace are probably the most well-known and are fantastic starting points. Headspace has a very user-friendly, approachable style with structured courses on managing anxiety, stress, improving focus, really great for beginners. Calm offers a huge variety of guided meditations, sleep stories, breathing exercises, music for relaxation. For those maybe looking for more variety or who are more experienced meditators, Insight Timer offers a massive library, much of it free, from thousands of different teachers and traditions.
Great options. Then there are the apps specifically based on cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, the ones that actively teach you to challenge those negative thought patterns we discussed.
Exactly. These apps are more instructional. Woebot is a really interesting example. It's an AI-powered chatbot that uses principles from CBT and another therapy called DBT, dialectical behavior therapy. It interacts with you conversationally to help you track your moods, identify unhelpful thinking patterns, and learn coping skills in the moment.
A chatbot therapist.
Sort of. It's surprisingly effective for guided self-help. Another one is Mood Mission. It takes a very practical approach. Based on how you're feeling and what's going on, it suggests specific evidence-based activities or missions like going for a walk, calling a friend, doing a breathing exercise designed to improve your mood and break negative cycles through behavioral activation. And if insomnia is a major component of your anxiety, there are specialized apps like CBTI Coach, developed with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, specifically designed to teach cognitive behavioral therapy techniques for insomnia.
Very specific. And what about just tracking? Understanding your own patterns.
That's where journaling and mood tracking apps come in. Dailyo is a popular one for microjournaling. It lets you quickly log your mood, activities, and maybe a short note without the pressure of writing long diary entries.
Microjournaling, I like that. Less intimidating.
Exactly. And over time, this simple tracking can reveal incredibly valuable patterns. You might notice your anxiety spikes after certain activities or improves after others. It helps you identify your personal triggers and the effectiveness of different coping strategies, increasing self-awareness.
So when choosing an app, what should people look for?
Definitely prioritize apps that clearly state they are based on evidence-based approaches like CBT or mindfulness. Look for a user-friendly interface that you actually enjoy using. And critically, check their privacy policy. You want to ensure your sensitive mental health data is being handled securely and responsibly.
Excellent advice. Okay, we've covered immediate relief, long-term lifestyle changes, natural aids, and even tech tools. The final piece seems to be about sustainability. How do you maintain that calm once you start finding it? And also the really important wisdom of knowing when this is bigger than self-help, when it's time to seek professional support.
Precisely. Sustained calm isn't usually about finding a magic bullet. It's about shifting from using coping skills intermittently only when you're in crisis to weaving intentional daily habits into the fabric of your life. It's about proactively cultivating an internal and external environment that supports stability and resilience.
Okay, intentional daily habits.
Yeah.
Like,
Firstly, establishing a reliable calming routine. Anxiety often thrives in chaos and unpredictability. So, implementing predictable anchor points in your day can be incredibly grounding. This could be a mindful morning ritual, maybe 5 minutes of stretching and deep breathing before you even look at your phone, or a specific transition ritual after work to consciously shift gears, like listening to calming music on your commute or changing clothes immediately when you get home. These routines provide structure and a sense of control that actively counteracts anxiety's tendency towards chaos.
Routines as anchors. Makes sense. We also absolutely have to talk about self-compassion. Anxiety so often comes bundled with shame or this internal voice telling you to just get over it or be stronger.
That harsh inner critic is a huge anxiety amplifier. Self-compassion is the antidote, and it's a skill you can actively cultivate. It means learning to talk to yourself, especially when you're struggling, with the same kindness, understanding, and validation you would offer to a dear friend.
So instead of beating yourself up for feeling anxious,
You acknowledge it gently. Okay, I'm feeling really anxious right now, and that's tough. It's understandable given what's going on. What do I need to feel supported? You validate the feeling instead of judging it. This shift in internal dialogue, paradoxically, often reduces the intensity and duration of the anxious state itself.
treat yourself like a friend. I love that. You also mentioned the idea of creating a calm toolbox. That sounds like a really practical externalized strategy.
It is. Your Calm Toolbox is your personalized, readily accessible arsenal of coping strategies, both immediate and longer term. It's helpful to actually gather these things or list them out. It might include physical items, maybe a small bottle of calming essential oil, a smooth stone to hold, a stress ball, printed copies of helpful affirmations. And it includes mental tools, reminding yourself of your go-to grounding technique, like 5-4-3-2-1, your favorite breathing exercise, 4-1-6, the number for a support line, or the name of a supportive friend you can call.
So it's ready to go when you need it.
Exactly. The point is to review it periodically when you're calm, so that when stress inevitably hits, you don't have to scramble and think about how to cope. You just reach into your pre-prepared toolbox and grab the tool you need. It reduces decision fatigue and stressful moments.
That's smart. And one more daily habit managing the outside world, the information overload.
Yes, mindful information consumption. This is non-negotiable in our hyperconnected world. The constant barrage of the 24/7 news cycle, the curated perfection or outrage often found on social media, these things are practically engineered to trigger your brain's threat response system.
So digital detox.
Not necessarily a full detox, but definitely mindful boundaries. Limit your exposure. Maybe set specific short windows during the day for checking news or social media, say 10-15 minutes at lunchtime rather than constant scrolling. And consciously curate your feeds. Unfollow accounts that consistently trigger stress or negativity, and follow more that promote calm, inspiration, or humor. Take control of your information diet.
Take control. Okay, so these habits build resilience. But let's talk about when self-help isn't enough. What are the clear signs, the red flags, that indicate someone's anxiety has crossed a line and really warrants seeking professional support? It's not weakness, right?
Absolutely not weakness. It's a sign of wisdom, strength, and self-awareness to recognize when you need more support than you can provide for yourself. There are some critical red flags to watch for.
What's the primary one?
The number one indicator is significant functional impairment. That means the anxiety is consistently interfering with your ability to function in important areas of your life. Your work or school performance, your key relationships, or just your ability to manage routine daily tasks.
Like if the fear of having a panic attack literally keeps you housebound, or social anxiety prevents you from pursuing career opportunities.
Precisely. If the anxiety is dictating your life choices and significantly shrinking your world, that's a major sign professional help is needed.
What else? What if you're trying the self-help stuff, but it's just not cutting it?
That's another key flag. If your symptoms remain severe or frequent despite consistent efforts to use self-help strategies like the ones we've discussed, or importantly, if you find yourself relying increasingly on unhealthy coping mechanisms to manage the anxiety, things like excessive alcohol use, problematic eating patterns, restriction or overeating, substance abuse, or excessive avoidance.
Using unhealthy coping as a crutch.
Exactly. And critically, the most urgent red flag. If you experience any suicidal thoughts or urges for self-harm, that requires immediate action. Don't wait. Contact a crisis hotline, go to the nearest emergency room, or reach out to a trusted professional immediately.
Absolutely crucial. And we also touched on anxiety linked to past events.
Yes, If your anxiety seems deeply rooted in or constantly triggered by unresolved trauma, that often requires specialized therapeutic approaches that go beyond general anxiety management. Therapies like EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, or specific trauma-focused CBT are often necessary.
Okay, so if someone recognizes these red flags, what are the main types of professional support available?
Psychotherapy, or talk therapy, is generally considered the first line of treatment for anxiety disorders. There are several highly effective types. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which we've mentioned, is excellent for identifying and challenging those anxious thought patterns and changing related behaviors. ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, is another powerful approach. It focuses less on changing thoughts and more on accepting difficult thoughts and feelings while committing to actions aligned with your personal values. For specific phobias or panic disorder, exposure therapy is often the gold standard. It involves gradually and safely exposing the person to the feared situation or sensation under the guidance of a therapist, helping to break the cycle of fear and avoidance through desensitization.
Therapy is key. What about medication?
Medication can be very helpful, particularly for moderate to severe anxiety, and it's often used in conjunction with therapy for the best outcomes. The most commonly prescribed long-term medications are antidepressants like SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and SNRIs, serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors. They work by helping to rebalance those key neurotransmitters like serotonin and norepinephrine over time.
And what about the faster-acting anxiety meds?
You're likely thinking of benzodiazepines like Xanax or Valium. These are powerful anti-anxiety medications that work very quickly, often within minutes, by enhancing the effect of GABA, that calming neurotransmitter. They can be very effective for short-term relief during acute panic attacks or intensely stressful periods. However, and this is a huge however, they carry a high potential for tolerance, dependence, and addiction and can have significant withdrawal symptoms. Because of these risks, they are generally recommended only for short-term or intermittent use under very close medical supervision. They're not typically a long-term solution on their own.
Okay, crucial distinction there. Therapy is the foundation, medication as potential support. Finally, many people listening might not be struggling with anxiety themselves, but they're supporting a loved one who is. What's the best way to be a truly helpful ally?
That's such an important question. The first, most fundamental rule is to be an ally through active, empathetic listening. Really try to hear them without judgment, and critically validate the experience. Anxiety can feel irrational from the outside, but it feels intensely real to the person experiencing it. Avoid dismissive or minimizing phrases like, just calm down, it's all in your head, or it's not a big deal. Those are incredibly invalidating and unhelpful.
So instead of minimizing, what did you say?
Acknowledge the reality of their suffering. Simple phrases like, that sounds really difficult, I can see how distressing this is for you, or it makes sense you're feeling overwhelmed right now. Validation creates safety and connection.
Okay, listen and validate. What about practical help? Should you jump in with solutions?
It's usually better to offer support rather than impose solutions. Ask open-endedly, how can I help you right now? Or what would feel most supportive to you? Let them guide you. Practical support might mean helping them research therapists, offering to drive them to an appointment, practicing a breathing exercise with them, or simply being a calm, reassuring presence during an anxious moment. Sometimes just knowing someone is there, understanding and non-judgmental, is the most helpful thing. Educating yourself a bit about anxiety, like listening to this deep dive, also helps you provide more informed and compassionate support.
That's great advice. Be an ally, validate, offer practical help. Okay. We have covered so much ground today. We've really journeyed through the complex landscape of anxiety, haven't we? We've decoded the body's intense fight-or-flight response. We've clarified that crucial difference between the slow burn of an anxiety attack and the sudden explosion of a panic attack. And we've armed ourselves, and hopefully you, the listener, with this comprehensive arsenal of tools. Everything from the immediate power of controlling your breath to the long-term resilience you can build through lifestyle changes, natural support, and even technology.
And the most important message through all of this is hope. Remember that anxiety, while incredibly common and challenging, is not a life sentence. It doesn't have to define you or limit your potential. The capacity for healing, for adaptation, for reclaiming that inner sense of calm and control, it is absolutely within you. You have the knowledge now to start rewriting your relationship with stress and anxiety.
Let's just quickly nail down those top 3 takeaways, the absolute essentials for quick retention. First, know the difference. Understanding the panic attack versus anxiety attack distinction is critical because it guides your immediate response and coping strategy.
Second, your breath is your anchor. Master the diaphragmatic breathing technique, specifically focusing on that longer exhale. Remember the 416 or 417 count. That's your direct line to activating your vagus nerve and signaling safety to your system.
And finally, challenge the noise inside. Learn to challenge anxious thoughts using those CBT-like techniques. Don't just blindly believe or obey the commands of your inner critic or your catastrophic predictions. Ask for the evidence. Choose the more realistic, more helpful path.
Beautifully summarized. The journey to a calmer, more resilient life isn't usually about one giant leap. It's built on accumulating small, consistent, intentional actions. It's about choosing day by day to actively cultivate your own inner capacity for calm. So the question for you, the listener, is this. Will you commit to mastering just one new strategy this week? Maybe it's practicing that 416 breathing for 5 minutes each day. Maybe it's downloading one of those apps. Maybe it's just starting to label your anxious thoughts. That single intentional step forward, that's where your control truly begins.